Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and a continuation of the series Healing the Divine Masculine, my personal journey. This is David. Today is Sunday, June the 22nd, the day after the summer solstice. This is the introduction. This series is based on my personal life journey. I've experienced a lot and learned a lot in 67 years. I want to share what I've learned with younger men so that they may benefit. We all have a story to tell and we can rewrite our story. We all must find our own path. I hope you enjoy this journey with me. So this one, part 10, is titled Deep Dive into Our Emotions. The last few videos have been talking a lot about our emotions, and I think this is very important, and it gets more important by the day. So here are the topics. Emotions, what are they? Then I'm going to use the map of consciousness, which I introduced in the last video or two, and using a book called The Map of Consciousness Explained, and the roadmap of our emotions, and then we'll walk through them from shame to enlightenment. Then a few comments, an example of how I use the map, my philosophy on acknowledge, embrace, transform, transmute, and integrate, some final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up. So emotions, what are they? Well, recently I was guided, in fact it was this week, just a couple days ago, I was guided to watch a short video by Teal Swan titled, Stop Trying to Regulate Your Emotions. I highly recommend it, and I'll put a link in the comments below. I really like Teal Swan and her work. A lot of things she says resonates with me. I truly enjoy watching her. So here's some of the comments from this video. Stop trying to regulate your emotions. Emotions are reactions in and of themselves. They occur within you in response to many different stimuli, such as people, places, things, situations, circumstances, energies that you're encountering in the external world, as well as your own thoughts, especially your own thoughts about those external stimuli. Now, I need you to remember that thoughts can be subconscious or conscious, so most of the time you're completely unaware of what thoughts your emotions are coming up in response to, especially because most of it is subconscious. Quote, when we encounter a stimulus, we experience a reaction to it in the form of a highly physiological response. What we feel within this felt-based response is information. Emotions carry a lot of information about our environment and also about ourselves, most especially about our subjective experience of our environment and our personal truths. That's a big statement. So here we have the map of consciousness, again, from Dr. Hawkins. I showed this in the last video. And we have the emotions in the first column under name of level, from shame at the bottom to enlightenment at the top. We have the logarithmic scale that he applies for the emotion. This is the strength of the emotions, and it's done logarithmic, which is like exponential. So apathy, if we take an example here of fear at 100 and apathy at 50, that doesn't mean fear is twice as powerful. It means that fear is 10 to 100th, whereas apathy is 50 to the 100th. So it's exponentially more powerful. So love is at 500 and fear is at 100. Love is exponentially more powerful than fear. We'll go into some of this in more detail. There's the predominant emotional state, then the view of life, the God view, and the process. I'm not going to go into all of these topics, but I am going to touch on some of them, particularly the view of life and the God view. We'll mention those in some of the slides. So the map of consciousness, I published this in the last video. It's a book, Power versus Force, in 1995, was published by Dr. David Hawkins. I read this book back in 2012. The chart can be looked at in many ways. Some people go for the numbers, others for the words. The map is designed to help the seekers of truth Seekers of truth go through many stages, and experientially, the stages are not linear, yet there is a definite evolution of consciousness for dedicated seekers. So, in other words, we don't just walk up that ladder of emotions. It's kind of a two steps forward, one step back, is what I like to describe it as. But yet, we can, over time, move from those lower emotions up to the higher level emotions throughout our life. The numbers are logarithmic, so 300 is not twice 150. It is 10 to the 300. Thus, an increase in just a few points is a big move. Going from 200 to 210 is a huge move. The key level is in the second column, 200, the level of courage. Courage and above are the emotions of power. They are life supporting. Below courage are the emotions of force. They are life inhibiting. If you contemplate the map for a while, you will feel the difference. In the Map of Consciousness Explained, this was a book published in 2020, taken from Dr. Hawkins' works. They say we change the world we change the world not by what we say or do, but by what we have become. Having a little trouble talking this morning. Greatness comes from within, and it is the courage to change oneself. I believe that's why this quote points to why courage, the level of courage, is so important. If you look closely at the map, there's a line between pride and courage. The level of courage marks the shift from positive to negative energy. It is the energy, speaking about courage, it is the energy of integrity, self-honesty, and real empowerment. 85% of the world's population calibrates under 200. In other words, they are in the survival paradigm. On the far left of the map, it's hard to see in that little picture there, but there's those three little bullets with the arrows where the lower 40% or so of the emotions below courage, from shame up to pride, is called the survival paradigm. So 85% of the world's population is living in the survival paradigm. And we'll go further into some of this in a minute. So the roadmap of emotions, which is what the map is, gives us a roadmap to help us move through our emotions. We move up and down each moment. If we can recognize where we are at a given moment, we can consciously move up the scale. Example, if a neighbor is doing something that is antagonistic, instead of taking the God view of vengeful, we can move through pride to courage and take the God view of permitting and then merciful. It's not always easy, but we can try, and with some practice, we can do this. The following descriptions of the emotions are taken from this book, The Map of Consciousness Explained. So we will start with shame. And so the way I'm doing this is I'm using, as you can see, the little graphic. We have the name of the level shame. We have the energetic log, the 20 is what it calibrates at in his system, the predominant emotional state, the view of life, the God view, and the process. So shame is proximate to death. It's, in their own words, it's one level above death. The behavior of people in shame is very dangerous. They are prone to hallucinations as well as paranoia. Shame can lead to false pride, anger, and guilt, and other low energy emotions. Shame experienced in early childhood can affect a person for life. And we used to be a shame culture where banishment from the tribe was the price paid. And we don't do it now, we're a punishment culture. When shame, we hang our heads, slink away, tail between our legs, trying to be invisible. That's the humiliation. We're eliminated from the tribe, or we eliminate ourselves. Next comes guilt. Guilt resonates at a score of 30, where the God view is vindictive. I think that's very interesting. Guilt is used to manipulate people, religious preoccupation with sin, used to exploit, coerce, and control. We carry guilt around for our past actions. This can lead to physical, mental, or emotional issues. I recently spent 2 years carrying around some guilt for past actions. Very powerful. Guilt can lead to self-flagellation or cruelty to others and animals. This is what I experienced when I was carrying around that guilt. Was I half jokingly said I was flogging myself for 2 years. Fortunately, I wasn't doing it physically. I was doing it emotionally and mentally. The next is apathy, where the view of life is hopeless. This level is characterized by poverty, despair, and hopelessness. People who have given up on life and, more importantly, on themselves. There's no hope, no will to live, staring blankly into space. The fate of many of our seniors who get shoved into homes and treated like burdens on society. I lived through this back in 1983, late 82, early 83. My grandmother died November of 82. My grandfather, who had gone pretty much blind and was very dependent on her, um, couldn't support himself. So my mother and her sister put my father or my grandfather, excuse me, into an old folks home, which was, a new concept back in 1983. And I remember going to visit him, and he just sat there on the bed, smoking a cigarette and just staring off into space. He had reached this stage of apathy, and he literally willed himself to death over a period of 3 months. So from November when my grandmother died to February when he died, just took 3 months because it was just time for him to go. And I remember him staring blankly into space. It was just life had been drained out of him. He had given up, and this can happen as we move through this. I know when I was going through my guilt phase that I just mentioned, um, I remember I actually did a video called "Don't Give Up on Yourselves." And I said, people will give up on you, but you can't give up on yourself. And I wouldn't. And that's why we're here today, because I won't give up. After apathy comes grief. This is the level of sadness, loss, and despondency, where there's kind of this tragic view of life. We all experience grief at some point in life. Some remain at this level, living in constant sadness and depression. This is the level of chronic mourning, bereavement, and remorse about the past. And in grief, one sees sadness everywhere. Part of the syndrome of loss is the notion of irreplaceability of what has been lost. And the loss, this is a big one, the loss of a loved one is equated to the loss of love itself. So you see that with, I've seen that now with a couple of women who lost their husbands in what we might say too early. And there is, in one of them, there is really a chronic mourning, um, where the void is so big, and because it was coming from you think about your sense of life and your happiness and stuff coming from another person, and then that person is taken away from you very quickly. Very easy, very difficult to recover from. And this is what they're talking about here with chronic mourning, um, because we're focusing on the past and what's lost. And this is a tough one. This is really tough. When a traumatized apathetic patient begins to cry, we know that they are getting better. So, in other words, the apathetic, which is the emotion just below grief, when they start to cry, they're moving into grief, and they're moving up the ladder of emotion, which means they're beginning to get better. So this is where we have to keep the emotions moving. When you're in apathy, the emotions aren't moving. You're kind of frozen there in that hopelessness. Here we can move through this. We get the grief. We got to let that emotion out. We got to cry. Cry is a big way to do it. Very powerful way. It's designed in us. Next comes fear. Fear runs much of our world today. We have a view of life that is frightening. Everywhere you look, there's something to be afraid of. Fear of enemy, old age and death, rejection. God's punitive, punishes us. The world just looks dangerous. All you got to do is turn on the news, which is why I repeatedly say turn off the television, get out into nature, just get away from all that. Fear is the favored tool for control by totalitarian agencies, regimes, and governments. We see this every day. The media and advertising play to fear. They introduce new fears almost daily. You can't turn around with running into another fear, something to be afraid of. Fear can be contagious, and that's very true. One person in the family becomes fearful, they'll try to spread it onto others and not even know they're doing it because it's subconscious. Fear limits personal growth and therefore societal growth. This is why each one of us has to wake up and move away from the fear because it benefits the society. Those in fear seek strong leaders who appear to have conquered fear. I think we're seeing a lot of that in the United States today. People are seeking a strong leader. What they don't understand is that most of those leaders, all the ones that seem to come to the forefront, are themselves at best the wounded masculine. So be careful about who you follow. Next, after fear comes desire. Desire motivates vast areas of human activity, including the modern economy. There's that predominant emotional state of craving. We crave something. We see something that somebody else has or something that's advertised on television, and we form this desire. The downside of that is if we don't get it, we think God is denying us, and our view of life can be disappointing. Desire moves us to expend great effort to achieve goals or obtain rewards. Desire has to do with accumulation and greed. Desire is insatiable. So the satisfaction of one desire is merely replaced by the unsatisfied desire for something else. In other words, how much is enough? Is there ever enough? You have to be very careful with that. TV has had a major influence on many people as it creates want and energizes the desire. Desire can therefore become a springboard to higher levels of consciousness. If it is channeled correctly, if it is channeled appropriately, the desire can lead us to higher levels of consciousness. It all depends on what we desire. Do we desire the materialistic rewards of our society, or do we desire the spiritual growth for ourselves? That's a big question. After desire comes anger. Anger is where we get the God view of vengeful. But anger can be constructive or destructive. Desire for things we don't have can lead to frustration, which then leads to anger. Frustration results from exaggerating the importance of desire. Think about that. How much importance do we put on that thing we don't have? If we put a lot of importance on it, we're going to go towards anger, and that will be destructive anger, destructive to ourselves mostly. Anger needs to be harnessed and expressed constructively. No one wants to be around a person who is angry, especially one who is angry a lot. Anger over social injustice has created great movements and major changes in our social structure. So this is where anger can be constructive. Anger can be used to move us, as we'll see, into courage. sometimes called righteous anger. I've used that term before because I have used this. This is one of the bigger parts of this map that I have used in my own life, is to use anger constructively to move to somewhere that I want to be or to make a change in my own life. But first, I had to move out of fear and get into anger. Basically, I'm just tired of this shit. I want to get out of here. So you gotta get that righteous anger going. It is possible and it does work. After anger comes pride. Pride has enough energy to run the U.S. Marine Corps. When you stomach in, chest out, it's called the proud chest, right? That you can tell when people are proud, their shoulders go back, the chest comes out. Oh, look at me, right? If you notice, the process is inflation. So we're inflating ourselves. We inflate our chest, right? But people feel positive when they reach this level. But as the old saying goes, pride goeth before a fall, the biblical phrase. Pride and the feelings that come with it are dependent on external conditions. The inflated ego is prone to attack. This is very true. Oh, look what I did. And then somebody is going to cut you down. Pride can be knocked off its pedestal back all the way down into shame. Okay, what you think, or what we think is something to be proud of, somebody else may not agree with us and can knock us right back into shame. I've experienced this in my life with my family. Because I was looking for something external. I was looking for some positive external feedback. And it didn't come. In fact, the opposite came and knocked me right off my pedestal. It'll deflate you. The downside of pride is arrogance and denial. And another one of the ways that we do this is we deny our addictions. We gotta move. We can get angry about our addictions, but we can also then, if we don't move through pride, we don't get past that denial phase where, oh, I really don't have a problem. I can handle it. I've been there before. I can handle it. We have to move through that. So we have to be conscious of that. Once we get through pride, though, if we can get through there, and we can, once we get pride, we come to courage. And at courage, power first appears. And you notice the words, we go back to the entire, if you go back and look at the entire map and compare the words from the emotions below courage to the emotions of courage and above. Look at here, the view of life is feasible. The God view is permitting. The process is empowerment. The predominant emotional state of affirmation. All of a sudden, the words become very positive. They become very life-supporting. It's a big change in the words that he uses in the map. This begins the life-supportive emotions. When we are in the lower emotions, courage is what we want to move towards. At courage, we have the energy to take action, to face our fears, to move forward, to grow. The courage to take action, to have those difficult conversations, even with ourselves. Look at yourself in the mirror and have that difficult conversation. Look at your partner and have that difficult conversation. This is where we have to take courage. We have to get to courage. At courage, life is seen as exciting, challenging, and stimulating. This is also where phrases I've used in the past come in, where we have to be uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, which takes courage. And the other phrase I learned at Rhythmia is life begins at the end of your comfort zone, which means we have to be courageous enough to move out of our comfort zone. At courage, we see opportunities instead of roadblocks. I can versus I can't. Okay. So you really see the difference here. Courage is the critical point of truth and integrity. It takes courage to live in your truth. It takes courage to speak your truth from the heart. And it takes courage to live with integrity every day. This is a very important level to get at. Think of the Lion in the Wizard of Oz, right? The next level is neutrality. The predominant emotional state is trust. God view of enabling. To be neutral means to be relatively unattached to outcomes. Wayne Dyer used to use that phrase all the time, detached from outcome. To be neutral allows for flexibility and non-judgmentalism. We roll with the punches when we are neutral. People at neutrality have a sense of well-being. The mark of this level is a confident capability to live in this world. This is a level of safety. And if we go around social media, we'll see a lot of people, I see a lot of people who will make comments about not comfortable in this world. And I used to say that about myself too. But we need to get comfortable in this world because that's why we're here. We're not here to go to Mars. We're not here to go to the moon. We're here to be grounded in this body on this beautiful planet and to experience what it means to be human. And if we can do that, if we can work on grounding ourselves, especially for the men who are listening, grounding yourself is one of the biggest things you can do every day. Just set your intention that I am grounded in this body on this planet and I am safe. I am safe. No matter what happens, I am neutral about it and I am safe. This is what we men have to do. Neutral people value freedom, therefore they are hard to control. It's a very important statement right there. Freedom. We're unattached to outcomes, flexible and non-judgmental. We roll with the punches. We just roll with life. And therefore we enjoy our freedom and we value our freedom because we are confident of being able to live in this world. And there is a feeling of safety there. The next level is willingness. We start to move into things like the predominant emotional state of optimism, a view of life hopeful, a God view of inspiring, which comes from the Latin in spirito, to be in spirit. All right, and our process is intention. So we're living with intention. Whereas jobs are done adequately at the neutral level, at willingness, work is done well and success is common. It's a different form of energy, as you can tell. You start to feel the difference between neutral and willingness. There's a kind of excitement for life going on now. Willingness implies that they have overcome inner resistance to life and are committed to participation. In other words, we are committed to being in this world. They are naturally helpful to others and contribute to the good of society. So we have a broader view of our purpose or our mission. Willing people are builders of and contributors to the good of society. We do it with our intention and with our heart. They are willing to face their inner issues. Having let go of pride, they are willing to look at themselves and learn from others. So there is a willingness to become self-aware, to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. Okay, why can we do that? Because we feel safe. I suggest that all the men out there, ground yourself every day. Tell yourself, I am safe. I am safe. Every morning, I am safe. After willingness then comes acceptance, where the predominant emotional state is forgiveness. The view of life is harmonious, and the God view is merciful, and the process of transcendence. Think about those words. We're starting to transcend those lower vibrational states. That's what everybody wants to do. They want to transcend or ascend into 5D. Well, we want to transcend those lower emotional states because at acceptance, a major transformation takes place with the understanding that you are the source and creator of the experience of your life. And acceptance, taking back your power, is completed with the realization that the source of happiness is within. Love is created from within. Acceptance is not to be confused with passivity, which is part of apathy. In acceptance, you live life on your terms without conforming to others' agendas. As one example is, we're able to say no. In other words, we have boundaries, okay, because we're living life on our terms. With acceptance, there is emotional calm, and a perception is widened as denial is transcended. At acceptance, you are not polarized by duality, but see the unity moving closer to oneness. Think about all the duality in our world today and the polarization that's going on because people are not in acceptance. We want to get past all that duality, right? The next level above acceptance is reason, where the predominant emotional state is understanding, and a view of life is meaningful, which I think is very important to have a meaningful view of life, that you are here for a reason, many reasons actually. Intelligence and rationality rise to the forefront when the emotionalism of the lower levels is transcended. This is the level of science and mathematics, the level of Nobel laureates and statesmen. It is easy to lose sight of the forest for the trees as intellectualizing becomes an end in itself. Reason does not in and of itself provide a guide to truth. It's a very important statement. Although reason is highly effective in a technical world, paradoxically, it is the major block to reaching higher levels of consciousness. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more coming up. Transcending this level is relatively uncommon. This is a very big statement, and it gets into more of that in the next, where we go to love, 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 love. Where view of the world, view of life is benign, God view of loving. Love, as depicted in the mass media, is not what this level implies. This love is characterized by the development of love that is unconditional, unchanging, and permanent. It does not fluctuate because its source within the person who loves is not dependent on external conditions. The love of life for life itself. This is the level of true happiness. Although the world is fascinated by the subject of love, it is interesting to note that only 4% of the world's population ever reaches this level of the evolution of consciousness. This is Dr. Hawkins speaking based on his muscle testing of tens of thousands of people and objects. I didn't talk about that earlier, but everything from the Bible to the Declaration of Independence and many other objects, such as the words that are used in those. But he came up with this, that only 4% of the world's population ever reaches this level of the evolution of consciousness. So 4 out of 100. Love is the gateway to the spiritual domain. Now, many of us who are on this path of seeking of truth understand this, that it comes from the heart. The gateway is the heart, the seat of love. After love comes joy, where the predominant emotional state is serenity, the view of life is complete, the God view is one. As love becomes more and more unconditional, it begins to be experienced as an inner joy. Joy arises from each moment of existence. It's a big statement. Joy is the level of healing in spirituality-based self-help groups. Joy and above is the domain of saints, spiritual healers, and advanced spiritual students. The hallmark of this state is compassion. At the high 500s, the world one sees is illuminated by the exquisite beauty and perfection of creation. So, in other words, seeing the beauty and perfection of creation in everything: people, animals, plants, rocks, everything. The beauty of perfection of creation. Sadhguru talks like this sometimes. After joy just comes peace. Peace, where the predominant emotional state is bliss. The view of life is perfect. The process of illumination. Peace is associated with the experience designated by such terms as transcendence, self-realization, and God consciousness. It is extremely rare. Commonly, individuals at this level remove themselves from the world, as the state of bliss that ensues precludes ordinary activity. Some become spiritual teachers, others work anonymously for the betterment of humanity. Perception at this level and above is sometimes reported as occurring in slow motion, suspended in time and space. Though nothing is stationary, all is alive and radiant. I thought this a very interesting comment, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and say I live in the level of peace, but I have, and it's happening more often, where it's always in the afternoons where time slows down, becomes suspended, and an hour can seem like 12 hours. It's happened a couple times recently again. It's very interesting. I don't know if I'm just being shown this level periodically or what's going on, but it's this statement really resonated with me because of what I'm experiencing. First time it happened was about 11 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, when I was out in Oregon. And time just stood still. It's always in the afternoon. Great works of art, music, and architecture that calibrate between 600 and 700 can transport us temporarily to higher levels of consciousness and are universally recognized as inspirational and timeless. When I read this, the first thing I thought of was the Great Pyramid of Giza. That if you visit that and go into the King's Chamber, you will definitely feel transported to higher levels of consciousness. And like walking back in time, it's quite amazing. Finally, we get to enlightenment, where the predominant emotional state is ineffable. The view of life is just is. You could also say, like, I am. In the process of pure consciousness. This is the level of the great ones of history who originated the spiritual patterns that multitudes have followed throughout the ages. All are associated with divinity, with which they are often identified. These beings set in place attractor energy fields that influence all humankind down through the ages. Great teachings uplift the masses and raise the level of awareness of all humanity. Great works of art depicting individuals who have reached the level of enlightenment characteristically show the teacher with a specific hand position called a mudra, wherein the palm of the hand radiates benediction. This is the act of the transmission of this energy field to the consciousness of humankind. And this is given to us in works of art to remind us of what these great teachers have given us through their sacrifice, because all of them had to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to transmit this energy field to us. So a couple of examples here is you'll see pictures like this of Jesus and Buddha with basically the same hand positions, giving us those energy fields. Some people say that Jesus was here to share, teach us about love, and Buddha was here to teach us about wisdom. You notice they're always depicted with the halo, the light shining. The hand positions are very similar. It's just something that's in our mass consciousness, that these images are part of us. So some comments. The fastest way to move from the bottom to the top is by aligning with truth and love. Due to the logarithmic nature of our emotional energies, one individual at the level of love counterbalances 750,000 individuals below 200. The significance of each person's inner evolution then becomes obvious. In other words, if you're looking for feedback for your spiritual growth, just look within and just know and believe and have faith that the work that you are doing is benefiting tens or hundreds or thousands of other people, and that you don't need to know that. Just believe, because he's proven it. Family pets calibrate around 245 to 250, which means that we are safer with a cat or a dog than we are with most humans on the planet. And if you've ever lived with cats and dogs, and I have with both, I can understand this completely. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting comment. So how do I use the map? What I have done in the past is recognize what emotion I'm experiencing at the moment, knowing that I have to move up the ladder to get to courage and above. It takes practice, takes intention, a willingness to do this. The biggest one was when I've talked about this in other videos, when I was at Rhythmia, my first trip there doing ayahuasca in June of 2019, where I did not push myself at all. I was in fear the whole time I was there. And at the end of the week, I got angry and I booked another week, came back a month later, pushed through that anger and pride to courage, and everything went beautifully. But I used this consciously. I knew that I had to hold that anger and turn it into constructive, righteous anger to get the courage in order to return 4 weeks later to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. These days, I strive to be in the levels of acceptance and reason. Acceptance is a big one for me. That's where the words forgiveness of myself and others, to be harmonious, to live in harmony with all of life, including my neighbors. which is why I used the example of the neighbor, the antagonistic neighbor. Because what I did was I went over and helped him on a project that I quote unquote don't approve of, so to speak. But I've gone over a couple times now and helped him because he's an older guy, 80 years old, and I don't want to see him hurting himself. So I could fight it and be upset and be angry, right? And therefore be antagonistic and vengeful, but I don't want to do that. I want to accept, and the best way to be in harmony with it was to go over and help him. And it worked. It settled my whole emotional body down by doing that a couple times now. So, and the other one is in the reason where the view of life is meaningful. It means we get up every day with purpose. There's a meaning to our life. And it doesn't have to be something grandiose with, a million views on YouTube. It can just be the living in a state of bliss and roll with the punches, right? And just appreciating all that beauty around us. This is such a beautiful planet. Of course, there are still some moments when I feel above these. As I mentioned, when time stands still, there's an incredible peaceful feeling when that happens. And there are moments when I am below them. I still get angry and frustrated at times. But I recognize it and I move through it very quickly. And my relationships with people have gotten better because of that. And I think a big part of it is being accepting. When we can be accepting of others, they will be accepting of us. And life flows better that way. That's what I have found. So, in 2 videos ago, I introduced this 5-phase philosophy or so that I came up with for myself when I was talking about shadow archetypes. So, with these lower emotions, guilt, fear, anger, especially, what we want to first do is acknowledge them. We want to admit that they exist and are a part of us. And then we want to embrace them, to accept that these dark aspects are part of our nature and can even be a source of strength or creativity. We want to talk to them. There's a comment in the book, or in a comment in one of the other books I was referencing a few weeks ago. I think it was in Cosmic Fusion, where we take these lower vibrating emotions and we treat them like little children individually. So anger, fear, pride, frustration, we take each one of them individually and treat them like a little child and talk to them and embrace them. Ask them what they want. What do you need? Okay? Because then we can begin to transform them, where we generally refers to a change in form or state, water into ice or gas, to transform the lower energy emotions into the higher energy emotions. And then we can transmute them, which is a larger change, such as turning lead into gold, a more profound change. So if we change anger and frustration into kindness and generosity, then we can transmute that into our essence, right? And then we integrate that into our whole, our entire spiritual body. And this is how I am thinking these days about moving through these emotions. is to acknowledge and embrace. That's where it begins. Some final thoughts. As stated earlier, reason is the major block to reaching the higher levels, the spiritual levels. And I view pride in the same way, and it is the block to reaching courage and moving forward into empowering oneself. In the book, Dr. Hawkins states that there are two critical fulcrums, is the word he used. The first is at courage, the initial level of empowerment. Here arises the willingness to stop blaming and accept responsibility for one's own actions, feelings, and beliefs. And the second is at love, which is just above reason, reached by accepting love and non judgmental forgiveness as a lifestyle without exception. That means we have to forgive some people that are very difficult to forgive. No one said this was going to be easy, but we can try. It just takes daily practice. Forgiveness is not condoning. We do not condone their actions or their words, but we can forgive them. Forgiveness is for ourselves, not for them. In summary, as previously stated, this was another one that caused me to dig very deep into myself. The information I shared really resonated with many of my personal experiences, and I hope that something resonated with you and that you were able to get some insight into your own life experiences. This is powerful stuff. Understanding our emotions. We are such powerful emotional beings, and we are not schooled in this. We have to find it out for ourselves. So I hope this helps. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I know it was a lot in a short period of time. This has now become my longest video. I wanted to share this important segment of the journey with you. And as I stated last time, it's about 5 weeks ago now, the next one will be in a week or three, about being a nice guy. I think that's where I'm going to go. Not sure yet. We'll publish this one and see what kind of guidance we get. Meanwhile, enjoy each and every day. Summer started yesterday here in the Northern Hemisphere. Summer is the season of the heart. The heart is associated with the fire element. It is the element of passion. And passion is the root of the word compassion. So live life with compassion for yourself today, compassion for others, and passion for life. Until next time.